Princess Arale stood at the balcony of the Sirathi royal citadel, watching the sky shift from violet to deep blue as the twin moons rose. She tried to calm her breathing, but her chest felt tight, as if the weight of an entire world pressed against her ribs. In many ways, it did. Her people were losing the war. Their fleets were scattered, their outposts cut off, their supply lines collapsing. Every day, news arrived of another system falling to the Gelrune swarm. And now, the council had given her one final duty, one final sacrifice to save what remained of the Sirathi civilization. She was to marry a human. To her people, humans were an unpredictable, stubborn, chaotic species. Useful as traders, talented in small skirmishes, but not a true galactic power. Not someone the ancient Sirathi Empire should rely on in a time of crisis. Yet Earth had offered an alliance that could shift the balance of the war. With one condition: a political marriage between their chosen representative and the Sirathi heir. Arale had agreed, because the alternative was extinction. She turned from the balcony as the doors opened. Her attendant, Lyros, stepped inside. "Princess," he said softly, "the human envoy has arrived." Arale expected to feel dread, but instead she felt only numbness. She followed Lyros down the hallway, each step echoing louder than the last. As they passed rows of ancient statues, former queens, warriors, philosophers, she felt their stone eyes watching her. Some seemed to judge her. Others seemed to pity her. Perhaps both were true. The marriage ceremony was simple, by design. No grand festival, no parades, nothing that would make her new husband uncomfortable in a foreign culture. The council insisted this was a relationship of convenience, not a celebration. Arale found that description cold, but she said nothing. Silence was easier. When she entered the ceremonial hall, she saw him for the first time. Commander Marcus Hale stood at the center of the room, hands folded behind his back. Arale had imagined a scientist or diplomat, someone soft-faced and mild. Instead, she saw a soldier with a calm, unreadable expression. He wasn't wearing armor, only a formal uniform. But something about his stance made it clear he was used to danger. His eyes were steady, sharp, almost too observant. They met hers, and for a moment, Arale felt as though he was measuring every breath she took. She lifted her chin slightly, refusing to be shaken. Hale bowed his head when she approached. "Princess Arale," he said. His voice was low, steady, controlled. "Commander Hale," she replied, trying to keep her own voice equally calm. The officiant stepped forward and began the brief ceremony. The vows were symbolic, ancient words passed down through centuries. But Arale wasn't thinking about the vows. She was studying the man beside her. His posture remained straight, but not in a rigid or arrogant way. His expression didn't show nervousness or pride. Instead, he seemed focused, like someone preparing for a mission rather than a wedding. When the ceremony ended, Arale expected him to look relieved or awkward. Instead, he met her gaze again with that same calm. "I appreciate your willingness to go through with this," Hale said quietly, so only she could hear. "I know it was not your first choice." Arale felt a small spark of irritation. "It was not yours either, I imagine." "True," he admitted. "But I intend to honor the alliance, and I intend to protect your people." There was no hesitation in his voice, no attempt to flatter her, no false emotion. Arale didn't know whether to trust that confidence or to fear it. Later, during the private reception, politicians and generals tried to speak with Hale, but he remained reserved. He answered every question with precise, short responses. He didn't boast about human military power. He didn't brag about battles won. In fact, he spoke of Earth as if it were far less capable than the Sirathi Council had hoped. Yet something felt off. Arale noticed the way he watched the room not in confusion, but in quiet calculation. He studied the guards, the exits, the placement of each attendee. Not like a diplomat. More like a strategist assessing a battlefield. When the reception ended, Arale walked with him through the halls of the citadel. The silence between them was long, but not uncomfortable. At least, not for him. Arale still felt unsure how to speak to this human who was now, by law, her partner. "You seem different from what I expected," she said at last. He looked at her with a faint, unreadable hint of humor. "A man eager to please my counsel, someone hoping for influence or prestige." Hale shook his head. "This alliance isn't about power for me. It's about survival. Humans fight best when survival is on the line." He paused, then added, "Just like anyone else." Arale wasn't convinced. His words were simple, yet there was something beneath them, something he wasn't saying. When they reached the guest chamber prepared for him, he turned toward her. "I understand this situation may feel strange," he said, "but I'll make this partnership work. I'm here to help your people." "Because it benefits Earth," Arale replied. "Because it's the right thing," Hale corrected gently. That answer surprised her. As he entered his room and the door closed behind him, Arale felt unsettled. Not by fear, not by discomfort, but by curiosity. Humans were supposed to be simple, emotional, easy to read. Marcus Hale was none of those things. And for the first time since the war began, Arale wondered if humanity might be far more complex and far more powerful than the galaxy ever believed. She didn't know yet that her new husband would soon step onto a battlefield and shatter every assumption she had ever held about his species. But as she walked back to her room, she could not shake the feeling that she had just married a man shaped by storms she could not yet imagine. And perhaps, she thought as she looked at the moons rising higher in the sky, that was exactly what her people needed. Princess Arale sat in the War Council chamber the next morning, trying to focus on the scrolling holoscreens filled with reports from the front lines. The room was shaped like a half-circle, with the High Council seated at the rim, and officers stationed near the center. Strategists whispered to each other, voices tense, tired, and heavy with fear. The air felt cold, not because of temperature, but because every person inside carried the weight of defeat on their shoulders. Only one person in the room did not look overwhelmed. Commander Marcus Hale stood silently near the table, hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the tactical map. He wore the same calm expression he had shown last night. Steady, unshaken, unreadable. Arale watched him from her seat, wondering again how such a composed man came from a species most aliens considered reckless and emotional. The meeting began when Counselor Theron struck the table with his staff. "The gel rune have broken through the outer perimeter of the Corin sector," he announced grimly. "We have lost 3 more colonies." A murmur spread across the room. General Sarath rose from his seat. "Our fleets cannot hold. Their formations are unpredictable. Their commanders shift strategies too fast. We cannot match their speed." I, Actor," another general added. "Their forces move like a single mind. Every time we adapt, they already know." Arale felt anxiety twist in her chest. The Gelruin were notorious for their relentless swarming tactics. They overwhelmed their enemies through sheer numbers and rapid adaptations. For centuries, the Sarathi Empire maintained defensive lines against them. But now those lines were collapsing like sand. The council turned to her. "Princess, do your human allies have any strategic insight to offer?" Counselor Theron asked. Arale swallowed. "Commander Hale is the representative from Earth," she said carefully. "If he wishes to speak, he may." All eyes shifted to Marcus Hale. He stepped forward without hesitation. "I've studied your battle logs," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "The Gelrune aren't unpredictable. Their movements follow patterns." The room erupted in disbelief. General Sarath frowned sharply. Patterns? Commander, we have fought them for decades. They have no patterns. Hale didn't flinch. They do, but you're looking at the wrong details. He tapped a control on the table, projecting a series of red and blue lines onto the holomap. Your reports focus on where they attack, not how they prepare. Arale leaned forward. She noticed the counselors exchanging confused glances. Hale continued. The swarm moves in 3 stages. First, they probe. Then they concentrate. Then, they strike. You mistake the probing for the main attack, so by the time you reinforce, the real attack is already happening elsewhere. As he spoke, he shifted the projection to highlight the timing of each movement. It looked obvious when he showed it almost painfully obvious. Counselor Theron stared, stunned. How did we miss this? Hale replied simply. You were studying them as if they were chaotic. Humans study enemies as if they are creatures of habit. Everyone has habits. Even swarms. The generals fell silent. Arale watched Hale with growing curiosity. He wasn't bragging, boasting, or demanding attention. He simply explained the logic, patiently and clearly. But she sensed something else, an underlying confidence that came from experience, not theory. General Sereth regained his voice. If this is true, Commander, how do you propose we counter them? Hale paused, as if weighing his words. You need to stop reacting and make them react to you. Set traps. Force them to commit early. Break their coordination. Humans have dealt with similar threats in our past. Your past? Counselor Theron asked. I was not aware Earth fought swarm-based enemies. Hale's expression darkened slightly, just for a moment. Not alien ones, he said, quietly. But history teaches us that numbers mean nothing without control. If you break the control, you break the swarm. The room grew still. Arale studied that brief flicker in his eyes. It was the first true glimpse of something deeper, something he carried like an old scar. She wanted to ask about it, but the meeting pushed forward. General Sereth cleared his throat. What would you need to test your theory? Access to your outer defense grid, Hale said. And command of 1 strike group. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. Giving command authority to an outsider was unprecedented. But what choice did they have? They were losing every day. And Hale had shown more strategic clarity in 10 minutes than their analysts had in months. No, Sereth said firmly. We cannot hand over our military assets so easily. Arale watched Hale's reaction. He did not argue. He simply nodded, as if he expected resistance. Counselor Theron glanced at Arale. Princess, as leader of the Alliance, the decision falls to you. The room held its breath. Arale looked at Hale. He stood still, composed, waiting, not demanding her trust, but offering the chance for it. She remembered his words from the night before. Humans fight best when survival is on the line. She also remembered the desperation in her people's voices. She turned to the council and said, Give him the strike group. The generals erupted in protest. Princess, that is irresponsible. We barely know this man. He could lead us into disaster. But Arale lifted her hand. We asked for humanity's help. This is their representative. If he has insight that could save our worlds, we cannot afford to ignore it. Marcus Hale bowed his head slightly toward her. Thank you, Princess. The council meeting broke into tense discussion. But the order was given. Hale would be granted limited command authority to reorganize one of the failing frontline fleets. Hours later, Arale found herself walking beside him down one of the Citadel corridors. She had many questions, but she started with the simplest. You saw things we did not, she said. How? Hale walked quietly for a moment. Humans analyze differently. We learn to survive by studying patterns in chaos. That seems very convenient, she said with mild skepticism. It was never convenient, he replied softly. Arale glanced at him. You speak like someone who has witnessed war up close. He nodded once. More times than I preferred. There was no pride in his voice. Only honesty. And you truly believe we can stop the Gelrune? She asked. He looked at her, a calm fire in his eyes. I don't believe. I know. For the first time since the war began, Arale felt a spark of hope not because of promises, but because this human spoke with the quiet certainty of a man who had faced darkness before and refused to be broken by it. As they reached the end of the hall, Hale said, Prepare yourself, Princess. When I deploy the strike group, the swarm will notice, and they will hit back hard. Arale met his gaze without fear. Then we will face them together. Hale nodded. Together. Neither of them knew it yet, but the battle that was coming would redefine the galaxy's understanding of humans and reveal the astounding power Marcus Hale had kept hidden until now. Commander Marcus Hale stood on the command deck of the Scifi strike cruiser. Vorlin, watching the stars stretch into thin silver lines as the ship entered faster than light travel. The bridge crew moved nervously around him. They had heard stories about humans wild, emotional, unpredictable. But ever since Hale took temporary command, he had shown none of those traits. He was calm. Too calm, some whispered. Calm in a way that suggested he knew something they didn't. Princess Arale watched him from beside the main console. She had insisted on joining this operation, even though many argued she should remain on the capital world. But Arale believed leadership meant standing with her people, not hiding behind palace walls. And more than that, she wanted to understand this human, who seemed to see the war more clearly than any Scifi strategist. A soft alarm chimed. Commander, said Officer Rethan, we are approaching Corrin's Reach. The calmness of his voice did not hide the fear in his eyes. Corrin's Reach was where Scifi fleets had been crushed repeatedly. It was a graveyard of shattered ships. Hale stepped forward. Bring up the swarm's last known positions. The holomap flickered to life, showing pockets of red signals Gelrune forces slowly spreading through the sector. Their movements looked chaotic at first glance, but Hale had already taught his team to see beyond that. Arale noticed him narrowing his eyes slightly. That was the closest he came to showing emotion. They're consolidating, he said. Just like I predicted. Officer Rethan swallowed. Then we will face their full strength. Yes, Hale replied. But that means they are predictable now. And predictability is weakness. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. To them, facing the swarm's full strength was a nightmare. To Hale, it was an opportunity. The cruiser dropped out of FTL near a broken asteroid field where the swarm was believed to be gathering. The stars snapped back into place, and immediately alarms blared. Multiple signatures, a navigator shouted. The swarm is already here. Red lights filled the map like drops of ink spreading through water. Hundreds of small bioships moved in eerie coordination, tightening around the Scifi cruiser like a net. Arale felt a moment of fear grip her chest, but Hale didn't react with panic. Instead, he stepped closer to the central display and spoke with steady confidence. Activate the decoy drones. Slow pattern, spiral drift. Decoys? Rethan asked, confused. But those won't stop. They're not meant to stop anything, Hale replied. They're meant to distract. Within seconds, hundreds of small metallic drones shot from the cruiser, scattering in unpredictable movements. The swarm reacted instantly. The bioships split, chasing different drones like predators following prey. Their coordination wavered. The crew gasped. Arale felt her heartbeat jump. He had been right. The swarm could be pulled apart. Hale's voice cut through the tension. Now, disrupt their formation. Fire rail, bursts. On Sector 3. Firing. Blue-white streaks of energy blasted across the battlefield. They didn't destroy many ships, but they forced the swarm to shift direction, further scattering their lines. Hale worked like someone playing chess at impossible speed. Every move he made forced the swarm to react. Every shift in the enemy formation seemed to unfold exactly as he expected. Arale leaned close. How did you predict this? Hale didn't look away from the display. Human combat history is full of enemies who rely on numbers. The trick is to break their rhythm. When they break rhythm, they break unity. The ship suddenly jolted as several enemy vessels slipped through the decoy net and fired at the cruiser's shields. Shields down to 80%, an officer shouted. Arale grabbed the railing. Even she felt fear rising as more red signals closed in. Hale did not raise his voice. Rotate defense grid. Bring the lower cannons to bear. And prepare boarding units. Boarding units? Rethan echoed. Sir, the swarm will tear ground teams apart. Hale finally looked up. His expression was sharp and steady. They won't be Sarathi ground teams. Sir. Arale felt a chill. You brought humans? Hale nodded once. A small squad. Enough to turn the tide. Enough. The crew looked stunned. The Sarathi had never fought beside humans in a real battle before. They had only heard rumors, stories of uncommon endurance and stubbornness. But no one truly believed the tales. The ship shook again, as enemy fire intensified. Commander, the swarm is adapting, an officer warned. They're regaining formation. Good, Hale said. That means it's time. He touched the comm device in his ear. Omega Team, begin deployment. A rough voice replied instantly. Copy, Commander. Dropping now. Quote, Commander. Arale turned toward the viewing window just in time to see something she never expected. Small metal capsules shot out of the cruiser, streaking toward the swarm like darts. Instead of firing at them, the swarm seemed almost confused, briefly hesitating. Then the capsules burst open, revealing armored human soldiers riding controlled thruster lines, landing directly on the hulls of enemy bioships. The crew stared in shock. Sarathi soldiers rarely boarded swarm vessels. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable. But the humans didn't hesitate for even a second. One officer whispered, They're not afraid. They're not afraid. Hale corrected quietly. They are afraid. They simply fight anyway. On the holo display, the tiny blue signals representing the human soldiers began moving with impossible speed. Each one cut pathways through the hulls of the bioships, forcing the swarm to break formation again as their vessels were disabled from the outside in. Arale felt her breath catch. This was no treaty bargain. No political convenience. Humanity had sent warriors who fought like they were born for chaos. Commander, she said softly. Your species. This is not what we expected. He finally met her eyes. His own gaze held a quiet intensity that felt older than his years. Most of the galaxy misunderstands humans, he said. But that doesn't matter. What matters is this. When survival is threatened, we don't stand down. We push harder. The cruiser shook again. But this time, it wasn't from enemy fire. It was from the shockwave of a massive swarm ship, exploding after being breached by Hale's soldiers. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Enemy formation collapsing. They're retreating. They're actually pulling back. Arale felt hope bloom inside her, warm and overwhelming. She turned to Hale, amazed. You did it. You saved the sector. Hale shook his head. Not yet. This was only the test. Arale stepped closer. Then what was this? He looked back at the battlefield as the swarm fled into the darkness. This was the moment the swarm learned something new. What? That humans don't break. Hale said quietly. And now, they'll fear that. Arale looked at him, and for the first time, she felt the full truth settle inside her heart. She had married a man shaped by unimaginable trials. A man her people needed more than they ever realized. A man the galaxy would soon learn to fear and to respect. Princess Arale stood in the palace garden, The night after the battle at Corin's Reach, staring at the glowing trees as their soft blue lights shimmered in the breeze. The victory should have brought her peace. Her people had witnessed a miracle. A swarm that had crushed Sarathi fleets for decades had finally retreated. The news had spread through the capital like fire, lighting hope in hearts that had long accepted despair. But Aralei's mind was full of questions. Marcus Hale had shown brilliance on the battlefield more than brilliance. He had fought and commanded like someone who had lived through countless wars. His human soldiers had moved with discipline and courage beyond anything she had seen, and yet none of it matched the common stories she had heard about Earth. Those stories painted humans as simple, emotional, and technologically behind. Something didn't fit. She heard footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Only one person walked with that steady rhythm. Marcus Hale approached and stopped a few steps away. "Princess, you asked to meet me?" Aralei nodded, though her eyes remained on the glowing branches. "You saved Corin's Reach. You saved thousands of lives. For that, I thank you." She glanced sideways at him. "But I still don't understand you." Hale tilted his head slightly. "What would you like to understand?" "Everything," she admitted. "Your strategies, your soldiers, the way you fight, the way you know what the swarm will do." She hesitated before adding, "And why humans hide their true strength." Hale was quiet for a moment. Then he walked to the railing and placed his hands on it, looking at the distant city lights. "Earth has a complicated history," he said. "We had to learn to hide strength. We had to learn to appear smaller than we were." Aralei frowned. "Why? Why pretend weakness?" "Because real strength invites fear," Hale replied softly. "And fear invites war." Aralei stepped closer. "You mean you hide power to avoid being attacked?" "Yes," Hale said. "We learned that the hard way." There was something in his voice, a heaviness, like a memory too painful to revisit. Aralei waited silently. And eventually, he continued. "Before humanity joined the galactic community, we nearly destroyed ourselves," he said. "Through war, through conflict, through things we should never have done. We came close to extinction more than once. When we recovered, we made a decision. Never again would we let fear of humanity shape the galaxy. So, we hid our advancements. We hid our elite soldiers. We hid our darker history." Aralei felt a chill. "You pretended to be a minor species so others wouldn't fear you." "Yes," Hale said. "We wanted peace, and for a while, it worked." Aralei felt her breath catch. She had always believed the Sarathi were the wiser species, the older empire, the more controlled civilization. But hearing Hale speak, she began to see humanity differently. Not simple, not wild, but shaped by pain, by endurance, by survival. "Then why reveal yourselves now?" she asked softly. "Why show your strength in this war?" Hale looked directly at her. "Because the Gelrune do not negotiate. They don't fear reputation or treaties. They consume. And you were falling. If your people fall, the swarm grows stronger. So Earth decided it was time to stop hiding." Aralei held his gaze, feeling a strange mix of awe and concern. "So you came here, not for politics?" "No," Hale said. "Not for politics." "Then why the marriage alliance?" she asked. "Why bind yourself to us?" Hale hesitated, then spoke with quiet honesty. "Because alliances built on paper fall easily. Alliances built on family last longer. Earth wanted to give your people more than ships. We wanted to give you a partner in survival." Aralei's heart beat faster, though she wasn't sure why. "So you married me? To protect us?" "Yes," Hale said simply. "To protect your world. And because it was the fastest way to unite our militaries." Aralei felt warmth rise in her chest, pride, gratitude, something else she wasn't ready to name. She had expected a soft, manipulatable diplomat. Instead, she had gained a partner forged in struggle and quiet strength. But the moment was interrupted when a palace guard rushed into the garden. "Princess," he called urgently. "We have a problem." Hale turned instantly, his eyes sharpening like a blade. "What happened?" The guard bowed. "A large swarm fleet has appeared at the edge of the system, larger than anything we've faced. They're moving toward the capital." Aralay's breath tightened. "How long until they reach us?" "Hours," the guard said. "Maybe less." Hale stood still for only a second. Then his voice shifted into command mode, precise, unshaken, decisive. "Call the council," he ordered. "Prepare every defense line. Get civilians to shelters." The guard sprinted away. Aralay looked at Hale, fear mixing with trust. "This is retaliation, isn't it? We embarrassed them." "Yes," Hale said. "We hurt them, and now they want to crush your world before humans can intervene." Aralay stared at him. "Can we stop them?" Hale met her eyes with quiet intensity. "Alone? No. But together? Yes." "Tell me what we need to do," she said. Hale nodded. "First, we organize joint command. Human drop teams will target the swarm's command nodes. Sarathi fleets will hold defensive lines around the capital. And you—" He paused. Aralay lifted her chin. "Say it." "You need to lead," Hale told her. "Your people will fight harder if they see you standing with them." Aralay felt her fear melt into resolve. "Then I will." Together, they rushed back into the palace. Within the hour, the capital's sky darkened as defense shields powered up. Sarathi and human forces prepared side by side. The city hummed with tension and hope. Aralay and Hale stood on the command platform overlooking the mobilization. The princess turned to her husband. "When this is over," she said quietly, "I want to know more about your world. About what shaped you." Hale gave a rare, faint smile. "If we survive this, princess, I'll tell you everything." "And if we don't survive?" she asked softly. Hale looked out toward the stars, where the swarm approached like a storm. "Then," he said, "we will make sure the enemy remembers humanity." And Sarathi fought as one. Aralay felt something powerful rise inside her: courage, unity, purpose. As the alarms sounded and the final preparations began, she knew one thing for certain. Her people had not married a weak, simple creature. They had married a guardian forged in fire. And now, standing beside him, she was ready to face the greatest battle of her life. The sky above the Sarathi capital darkened as thousands of red lights appeared at the edge of the atmosphere, like drops of blood scattered across the heavens. The Gelruin swarm had arrived in full force, larger, faster, and more unified than any attack before. The city's shield domes shimmered, preparing for impact. Sirens echoed through the streets as civilians rushed to underground shelters. Soldiers stood ready on every platform and tower. This time, defeat meant complete destruction. Princess Aralay and Commander Marcus Hale stood together at the heart of the command center, surrounded by holographic screens showing the incoming threat. The tension in the air was heavy, but Hale's expression remained steady, calm, in a way that made everyone around him breathe a little easier. Aralay looked at the approaching swarm, her heart thundering. "There are so many." "Yes," Hale said, eyes fixed on the tactical feed. "This is their full force. They want to finish the war tonight." Aralay swallowed her fear. "And we will stop them tonight." Hale nodded once. Together, the doors behind them opened as generals from both species entered. Human soldiers stood beside Sarathi warriors, their armor shining under the bright lights. Aralay saw the determination in their eyes. She knew every fighter here was ready to die if needed, but more importantly, they were ready to win. Hale stepped to the center of the room. "Everyone, listen." His voice was firm, cutting through the noise. "The swarm's strategy is simple. Full pressure. Overwhelm us. Crack our shields. Break our lines. They will not stop unless we make them stop. General Sarath frowned. How do we break a force like that? Things were watching. And 14 Partnal sign. Well, for most of the 7. We strike at the head, Hale replied. Just like we did before. But this time, we go deeper. He changed the holomap, highlighting several large red structures within the swarm. These are command nodes. If we take them out, the swarm falls into chaos. These. Arale stepped forward. Sarathi fleets will hold the lines. Keep the swarm off our cities. Keep the people safe, Hale continued. Human drop teams will board the largest command nodes. Meanwhile, Princess Arale will coordinate the defenses from the surface. General Sarath blinked. The princess? On the command lines? Arale lifted her chin. My people must see me. They must know. I'm fighting beside them. Hale gave her a small nod, full of respect. And they will fight harder because of it. Moments later, the battle began. The swarm hit the shield dome like a tidal wave. The sky exploded with flashes of blue and red. Bioships ripped downward, firing acidic blasts that sizzled against the shield. Sarathi anti-air cannons answered with streams of glowing energy. Human fighters darted among the swarm. Small but fierce, like sparks cutting into darkness. Arale stood on a balcony overlooking the battlefield, her voice transmitting through every military channel. Sarathi soldiers, she called. You fight today not only for our world but for every star that still shines under free skies. Stand firm. Fight with courage. We will not fall. Ever Utis. Ever Utis. A roar of approval echoed from the ground troops. Below her, Hale prepared to lead a human assault team. His armor was dark and simple, but it seemed heavy with history. Arale found her gaze drawn to him, her worry slipping through despite her strength. Marcus, she said softly, stepping toward him. This mission, it's dangerous. He gave a faint smile. Most worthwhile things are. I'm serious. She held his arm. Please be careful. His expression softened. I always am. But don't worry about me. Worry about staying alive. Your people need you. Our people, she corrected firmly. He paused, then nodded. Our people. His team boarded the dropships, engines flaring. Arale watched them rise into the chaos of the sky, disappearing into the swarm's red storm. The battle raged. Swarm ships crashed against the dome. The ground trembled. Sarathi fighters screamed through the atmosphere. Humans deployed boarding pods that punched holes through giant bioships. Explosions lit the sky like fireworks of war. Inside the command center, Arale coordinated fleet movements, adjusting defensive lines, guiding air units to weak points. Her voice stayed steady, even as the shield dome began to crack under pressure. We need reinforcement at the western sector, she ordered. Redirecting now. An officer responded. The dome flickered, a sign it was close to breaking. Hold, Arale said, gripping the edge of the table. Just hold. Meanwhile, far above, Hale and his squad landed on the largest command node. It was a massive organic structure pulsing with red energy. Hale fought through thick corridors, moving with controlled precision. His team covered him, pushing forward even when the enemy outnumbered them 20-1. At last, they reached the central core. This is it, Hale shouted. Plant the charges. As his soldiers worked, the structure shook violently. The swarm sensed the threat. Creatures poured into the room like a living wave. Hale drew his blade, fighting with strength and speed that seemed impossible for one man alone. His armor cracked, his arm bled, but he refused to fall. Marcus, the dome is failing. Arale's voice crackled through his comms. Hold on, Hale growled as he cut down another attacker. We're nearly done. Finally, the explosive charges activated. His team retreated to the extraction point as the entire command node began to collapse. "Detonate," Hale ordered. The explosion ripped through the structure, sending shockwaves across the swarm. The red lights flickered. Ships faltered. The coordinated movements broke apart, replaced by confused, scattered drifting. Arale saw it happen from the command balcony. "The swarm is breaking formation," an officer shouted. "They're falling back." The sky, moments ago filled with organized destruction, now looked fractured and chaotic. Sarathi and human forces surged forward, pressing the advantage, driving the enemy out of the atmosphere. Arale felt her legs weaken with relief. She grabbed the communicator. "Marcus? Marcus, do you copy?" There was static. Then a rough voice answered. "Still here, Princess." Her heart eased. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved us." "No," he said. "We saved us." Hours later, when the last of the swarm was chased out of the system and the shield dome slowly powered down, Arale went to meet Hale as he returned to the surface. His armor was damaged, his face streaked with dust and sweat, but he stood tall. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She simply wrapped her arms around him in a fierce, grateful embrace. Hale hesitated for only a heartbeat before returning it with equal strength. All around them, soldiers cheered. Humans and Sarathi stood together, celebrating the impossible victory. Arale looked up at him. "The galaxy will remember this day." Hale nodded. "They'll remember that humans stood with the Sarathi. And that together," Arale said softly, "we were unstoppable." For the first time in a long while, the stars above the capital shone bright and peaceful. And the princess knew her people had not just survived, they had found new hope. Not because of politics, but because of the quiet, astounding power of the humans who fought beside them and the man who led them through the darkness.